Okay, hello everybody. This is Shaney Haycraft with Craft and Trade Entertainment, and this is the first tutorial in a group of tutorials I'm going to be doing in Pro Tools, covering anything from setting up sessions to routing, mixing, mastering, anything kind of inside the box related. And so we're going to start out here in this first one with how I set my sessions up. And as you can see, I've already created a master fader, but if you wanted to do that already, click new, stereo, master fader, and you would have that here, analog 1, 2. Now, what I would do next is, let's say I want to create a stereo aux input here that goes out to your master fader. I'll call that my 2 mix. And what that means is that it's what I'm going to have everything in the mix eventually going to, and its input's going to be bus 7 and 8. And I'll go over all this in more detail in just a moment, but let's say now I want to create some kind of groups, or what I call groups, or you call them buses too. I'm going to create, let's say, 4 stereo aux inputs. Okay, move this back over here. Now what you're doing here is creating a place for what I normally do is a group of audio signals to go for a number of reasons. If you want to control the volume of a number of instruments or vocals at one time, or if you want to apply an effect or a plug-in to a number of audio signals at one time, this is kind of what you do to control them as a whole. So what we're going to do is, I want all of these to go to my 2 mix because they're going to end up there. It's like some of the last steps in, for example, vocal processing. So I use a hotkey shift, or I've shift to select all of these tracks, and then hotkey shift alt to send these out to 7 and 8. So now they come into the 2 mix. And let's start here, and we'll call this back hook, which for me that's the background vocals for the chorus or the hook. Main, hook, which you don't have to necessarily do that, but for your main vocals for the hook. Then back vox for your backing vocals for your verses or whatnot, and then main vox for your lead vocals. Okay, so now you've got all these. So, for example, the reason that I do it this way is, let's say I go ahead and I want to create, just for example, 4 mono audio tracks. Okay, and what the point of this is for me is, let's say this is a lead vocal. I want this lead vocal to go to the main vocal. So the output, let's just choose 910, and we'll make the input for the lead vocal 910. So now it's traveling out of this audio signal, or off this audio track, and it's coming in here to the main vocal. Let's say this is a background vocal, which would be back vox here. We'll make this 1112. And so we'll send this out to that bus, and it will come in here to this backing vocal. Now here we have no inputs yet on the main hook So we'll go ahead and select the next one in line, 1314, and the next one in line here, 1516. Let's say this was the lead vocal for your chorus or your hook. So we want this to travel out to 1314, main hook. And this backing vocal for that hook would go to 1516. Like so. And so now if an audio signal travels out of this one, it's coming in here. If it travels out of this one, it's coming in here. If it travels out of this one, it's coming in here. And if it travels out of this one, it comes in here. And the reason for that, one thing I use this for, let's say, for example, the main vocal, which is right here. If you want to just, after you've recorded your vocals, let's say you just want to maybe touch the top of the vocal to make sure that it has somewhat of a uniform signal. You know, you may just touch the top of something, you know, pull the threshold back till you just see the needle, apply a bit of compression here. That way, if you've got multiple lead vocals in a verse coming through, you want to, not a lot, I mean, I might even go down to 2-1 ratio, kind of a quick attack, but also a quick release, and just touch the top edge of it. Once you see this just start to come, that way if your last main vocal has a louder part on it, or whatever the case is, it's only going to touch the loudest parts, but it's going to leave everything else alone in the other vocals if, you know, they're not crossing that threshold on the compressor. And you could, you know, kind of do that with the backing vocals too here. You know, if you wanted to, we'll just copy this over using the Alt key. You know, if you wanted to just kind of glue a group of backing vocals together, you might do the same thing. You might pull it down a little bit till you see it touch a little bit more. And then you might be able to, you know, say you've got a couple of decibels of compression going on here, you may, you know, compensate for that with the makeup gain back up to 2 decibels, what you compressed it down, and you may have a more uniform backing vocal that's glued together a bit more. You know, it's kind of a way to control groups of signals that are all ending up in one spot. You know, lead vocals and backing vocals usually is what I use that for. I tend to try to do EQ. Well, you know, I always do EQ and any kind of, you know, inserts on the actual tracks themselves, on the tracks themselves, and not try to EQ a group of backing vocals or lead vocals on one of these aux inputs, one of these bus tracks. I don't, you know, you don't want to do that because you might be affecting an EQ that may work well for one vocal, but not the other one. So you want to do any of that kind of thing on your individual tracks. But the routing goes like this, you know, you send that out and then you choose on your aux inputs here where they're pulling from. And, you know, you can also use those buses for side chaining and things like that, but that's something that I'll get into later when we go on to some other tutorials when you're getting deeper into the mixing and processing side of things. But, you know, that's kind of how you set it up, you know, as far as the audio tracks that you're going to be recording, and then your aux inputs where you kind of start trying to glue the different pieces to your session together. And then obviously your 2 mixes where you will start to do, you know, a little bit of light processing on it to try to glue the mix together before you send it to mastering, to your mastering part of the mixing process, or part of the overall process. So, you know, this is, like I said, the first, and it's a short tutorial. You don't have to bear with me. This is the first tutorial I've ever done. But it's kind of the way that I set up my sessions I route them and why I route them that way and why I set them up that way. And if you like the way that you set up a template, like say you set something up, I mean, obviously you'd have more vocal tracks and things like that. But if you like the way that you set that up, you can go down here to the Save As Template and you can name, whatever it is that you want that to be and hit OK. And then you will have this template already set up. So you can, when you start a new session, you select that as your template and it will go ahead and load this up so that you don't have to go and set these up every time like this. You'll already have them set up so that you can get into, your recording or whatever the case is, quicker without having to go through this process every time. Because it can be tedious. So if you find something that you like, then save it as a template, or if you have a few different things that you like to do depending on what kind of song you're recording, then you could do this. So this is the first tutorial in the first group of tutorials with basic session setup and routing. And thank you for listening, and there will be more tutorials to come. Stay tuned. Thank you.